Hello and welcome to Lexitecture, a podcast about word origins and histories. My name is Ryan, and in each episode my friend Amy and I bring a new pair of words to share their stories with each other and you. You can find our past episodes and the occasional blog post on our website at lexitecture.com. Follow along with us on Twitter and Facebook at Lexitecture, and if you really like what we do, you can support the show at patreon.com/lexitecture. Today's episode, Quick, Despot. Would you like to take it away with an actual word for this episode?
An actual word? Yeah, go for it. No worries. So it's just occurred to me after all our chat about Scottish accents that you're probably going to like the way that I say this word.
Oh, excellent.
And that hadn't really occurred to me until right now. But nonetheless, I think that you'll be amused by the way that I say the word quick.
Oh.
And this is one of these words. You know the way sometimes you choose a word because it pops into your head for some other reason, or you encounter a word and you think, oh, I wonder what the etymology of that is. Or, you know, sometimes you read something that leads you to something else, and there are various different sort of methods by which I choose the words that I'm going to talk about here. I can't really remember why it is that I looked this one up. I think it was in a bit of a rabbit hole of trying to find words so that I'm not always researching it right at the last minute. Because, you know,
yeah,
that's who I am as a human being. I think I was trying to get ahead of the game, and I had a few contenders, and this one really, I don't know, I really liked it. I found it interesting. So, quick, which I can say quick, or I can say quick, the way I would actually say it. Isn't it interesting that vowels are where accents really live? And quick, both as an adjective and as an adverb and as a noun, as the OED cites it, is originally cited in early Old English. So this word has been around for a really, really, really long time. And I quite love it when there's Old English citations in the OED, because I find myself looking at them and, you know, the relevant word is underlined, but you look at the rest of the quotation and you think, what the hell is going on here? So I'm going to read you the first citation of the word quick in the English language according to the OED, but I can't tell you what it means because I just simply don't understand enough of the words. I also can't tell you if I'm pronouncing any of these words in any sort of measure of correctness, but I'm going to have a damn good go.
There you go.
Eac thas eorthan, the eala quicke hueta bilibath, eala here West Mbero, Gelaiteled. There we go.
Works for me.
And the first sense given of the word quick is characterised by the presence of life. And this is what I found most interesting about this word. It doesn't mean fast. I mean, it does mean fast, but it doesn't get to mean fast for quite a long time after the early Old English citations. And in fact, there are a lot of different definitions for the word quick that have absolutely nothing to do with speed. They are mainly related to the sense of being alive, characterised by the presence of life. And this reminded me of the you know, I've lived many lives and done many things, but once upon a time, I was an organist in the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, I was raised as a Catholic, so it was quite interesting to me to, you know, I didn't defect religiously. I am of no particular religious belief these days. But I was raised as a churchgoer, and I went to Catholic church from a very young age, from birth pretty much. And then when I was about 17, I started to play the organ in the Scottish Episcopal Church. And the service was very different. And they used the phrase, the most obvious kind of biblical phrase that uses this word in this sense is the quick and the dead.
Yeah.
Meaning the people who are alive and the people who are not alive. But the word quicken was used within the Episcopal service, that thou might quicken us, O Lord. And I remember, it was one of these things that I remember hearing it and thinking, what are they talking about? What does this mean? And at that point, I kind of remembered the quick and the dead and thought, oh, those guys weren't speedy, they were alive. So
right. Yeah.
we see this, we see this very stable being used. The latest citation for the very first definition given in the OED is 1857. Interestingly, the 1857 one, there isn't a wick thing in this world as can work as it should do if it doesn't hate as it should do. And wick, it didn't occur to me that wick and quick might be the same. But this reminds me of reading The Secret Garden. Do you know The Secret Garden?
Yeah.
I'm always amazed by how many people haven't read The Secret Garden, because it was a book that as a kid, I absolutely loved Frances Hodgson Burnett books. And wick is used by young Mary Lennox. It's brought to her by Dickon, who's the Yorkshire kid who kind of befriends her and helps her to see that the garden is a beautiful thing, and that being outside and being amongst nature is a really lovely thing. And wick is the word that's used, and it means lively or alive, a thing that can grow and a thing that can flourish. And it hadn't occurred to me that wick and quick were in fact the same word, the same idea. So we get all sorts of senses of quick meaning life. We get it of animals or cattle. It can then be applied to things that are inanimate in figurative uses or in extended uses to describe a person or an animal, as in being alive or not being alive. There's an interesting definition it's archaic and literary. It says that quick was used as a complement to the subject of intransitive and passive verbs, or to the object and occasionally the subject of transitive verbs. In early use, frequently preceded by intensive all. So it was kind of a part of grammar, if you like. And we also have things like quick feelings, another obsolete usage. Yeah. Quick flesh, a part of the body that's capable of movement or capable of sensation, sensitive to pain, that sort of thing. Of plants, so words like quickwood. Of a baby or a fetus, and this idea of quickening, seeming alive, and also to refer to pregnancy. A woman could be quick.
Oh, that's interesting. This is also an eye-opening epiphany for me, because of course Mercury was called Quicksilver. Ah, yeah. Because it's silver, but it's moving around all the time. It looks like it's alive. That hadn't occurred to me. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's lovely. Cool. We get alive with or characterised by some feeling or quality. So you could be quick with excitement or quick with life, quick with substance. And then we get our second sense of a thing having a specific quality characteristic or suggestive of a living thing. Lots and lots of obsolete uses that are applied to, almost anything you can think of. A coal that's live and burning, a fire that's a flame that's going. We then get the sense of quick-witted, and this is around about, it's given as circa 1225 or 1200, of speech or writing, etc., lively, full of wit or acute reasoning. So we get quick wine or beer that is lively or effervescent, a quick voice, with reference to colour, colour that is vivid, bright or dazzling, which I thought was rather lovely. The idea that the colour is so strong that it looks alive. And I'd always thought that quick-witted was speed-related. Yeah, me too. It makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. That's very interesting. And not until sense number 22 do you get moving or able to move with speed, swift, doing something swiftly or in a short time. Huh. So again, it's an early citation, but if you consider that early Old English, not until around about 1300
were people described as being quick, as in able to move fast.
As in fast.
So,
interesting.
Yeah, sense 23, that's, I mean, most of the, from 1 to 22, most of the senses given are obsolete or they're archaic. But I found that very, very interesting. And then that's 23 cool. Of movement, rapid or swift, rapidly moving or occurring. And that's also from around about 1325. Although, of course, dating Middle English is a tricky thing. So they say circa 1300. But he siwed after the traitor mid-well quick. He chased after him very, very fast. And then we get 24, keenly perceptive, capable of ready perception or alert. So, yeah, the idea of being quick-minded, quick-eyed, that's another sense that's given.
Right.
It's difficult to say whether or not it was lively first or it was fast first, because these words seem to be emerging at around about the same time. But yeah, I think your assumption that quick-witted is more about being lively than it is about being fast. So Etam Online has this to say about quick, which they spell from Old English CWIC, quick. And it comes from the PIE root gwei, GWEI, which means to live. So again, that sounds very, very stable. Some of the cognates that we have, these are interesting. It's a good list of cognates. Forms all are part of abiogenesis, aerobic, amphibian, anaerobic, azoic, azotemia, any part of biography, biology, biome, etc. Cenobite, Cenozoic, convivial, epizoic, epizoon, macrobiotic, microbe, protozoa, protozoic, quick, here we get quicken, quicksand, quicksilver, quiver, the verb meaning to tremble, revive, survive, viper, vital, etc. And vitamin. I found myself interested by vitamins. I did a little bit of digging, because it had never occurred to me that this word had an etymology. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you just you just assume that these words sort of landed from the heavens. And I discovered that, first of all, it's a relatively new word. It was coined in 1920, originally 1912, vitamin with an E on the end, by the Polish biochemist with a fantastic name, Casimir Funk. Awesome. From Latin, vita, which comes directly from that PIE root, and amine, as in the chemical, they were thought to contain amino acids. And that was an incorrect assumption, and that's why the E was lost at the end. And the idea, the notion of giving vitamins letters was, started at the same time. So vitamin A was discovered first in 1913. And, I tell a lie, 1910 we had thiamine, then vitamin A. So the way that these vitamins were named is quite interesting, because it may have occurred to you before that while there's vitamin A, B, C, D and E, there is no vitamin F.
Yeah.
Nor G,
That's
nor
true.
H. But there was once, which I found
Really?
I found pretty cool. So I found this information on Wikipedia. There was a cool little article that I read on a site called The Straight Dope, which is just a sort of a general question answering site. I'm definitely going to check out some more of that, because, I like questions. I found that vitamin K, interestingly, there's no E, F, G, H or I, but we get vitamin K. And the reason for that is that it was discovered by a Dutch scientist, and they discovered that it related to the process of coagulation. And the Danish word, excuse me, not Dutch, Danish, apologies. The Danish word coagulation is spelled with a K. So they called that vitamin K, which makes sense.
Oh, interesting.
But vitamins F, G and H were discovered and named as such. And it was then discovered that they didn't actually fit the criteria for being vitamins. So some of them fit into that category. So vitamin F refers to essential fatty acids, which are needed in large quantities by the body. So that means that it doesn't fit the definition of a vitamin. Vitamin G, which is riboflavin, was reclassified as vitamin B2. And vitamin H, which is biotin, was reclassified as vitamin B7. I don't know if there was ever a vitamin I, but vitamin J was also reclassified as vitamin B2. There was then vitamin L, 1 and 2, vitamin M, vitamin P, vitamin PP, vitamin S and vitamin U. But they all were either considered not to be vitamins or they were reclassified as B vitamins. But because they belong to the same sort of rough chemical group.
Right.
But yeah, the idea that these are substances that keep you alive or indeed quicken you is right there in the pie root. Another thing that I got interested in, partly because there's a bit of me that really, really loves the spelling CWIC, because we just don't see it in English anymore.
Yeah.
And I kind of wondered, why did that change? You know, what was the sort of impetus? And I kind of postulated, before I started research, and I postulated that it was perhaps just somebody decided that the QU looked better or was a bit fancier. And then, of course, there's the influence of French upon English. And, you know, it seemed to me that QU was a much more French-looking pair than CW was. But I had a little look, I did a little bit of research, and I found a really interesting post on the Linguistic Stack Exchange site where someone is asking a question that I just hadn't considered. And the question is, was the change in spelling from CW to QU in English associated with any difference in pronunciation? And the post says, I had the same reaction. I always thought that CW in Old English represented qu, and the same for modern English QU, and that the change from one to the other was purely orthographic, since the QU digraph was more familiar to Anglo-Norman scribes. But on an English Stack Exchange question, I came across the following comment. You should really explain that the second group are almost entirely due to the Normans being unable to pronounce the Celtic/Anglo-Saxon qu, CW, and so substituting the nearest Latin equivalent, qu, as I would read it. Yeah. So the poster asks, how were these two syllables being pronounced if they were being pronounced differently? And this is, you know, it's a discussion site, so I can't say with any great certainty which one is correct. But some do. Somebody points out that French QU was just a way to spell k, the k sound. So the qu sound and the k sound aren't in fact quite the same sound. So it is a bit of a mashup that this has been going on. It says in the post, qu was the way the sound was spelled in English and QU in Latin. Both come from Pi labiovelars, gw, gw, qu. Q was no longer pronounced as a labiovelar in Romance languages by the time English arrived. By the time of the Norman conquest, French qu was just a way to spell k, so it might well not be a natural spelling for a labiovelar like qu, at least at first. However, since all writing was done individually with individual spellings, and most of the writing is gone forever, we have very little idea how the spelling actually developed. And then, just to stir the pot a little bit, I wouldn't put any stock in these comments. Celtic/Anglo-Saxon qu and smooth the two together don't sound like terms that would be used by someone who knows what they're talking about. The great wonder of internet discussions. But I was really interested in that. I was also interested in the term labiovelar because I was pretty sure straight away that this was something to do with phonetics and also something about linguistics that I am not particularly up on. So I looked up labiovelars and I wondered if it might be interesting to discuss what a labiovelar is. First of all, I was interested because I've seen the word velar before, V-E-L-A-R, and I was sure it was an anatomical term, and I believe it's a muscle that has some sort of a muscle or a structure that's involved with the palate. But
Right.
properly, a velar sound is a speech sound made with the middle part of the tongue touching the soft palate. So labiovelar sounds are sounds made with the lips and soft palate. So for example, w,
Yeah.
g, qu. If you make those sounds and pay attention to where your tongue is in your mouth,
Yeah,
you
for
have
sure.
to have interaction between the tongue and the palate. So, isn't it good to be alive? I'm glad that we are all quick and here
Fantastic.
to discuss words.
And also, it's amazing how often this comes up because, like you kind of grew up going to church and still do when it's not a plague apocalypse time. And so I'm familiar with, the liturgical and biblical sort of quick and the dead phrase, but typically of how this podcast operates, Amy brings the biblical and liturgical from my experience in playing the organ in the Scottish Episcopal Church said this to me. And I'm like, hey, that's that movie with Jane Hackman and Sharon Stone where they get to shoot at Leonardo DiCaprio.
God help us all if I'm the high culture.
And so again, it just kind of, it's funny how often these lines get retrodden.
The really funny
That's
thing...
totally the first thing I did.
The really funny thing about going to play in the Episcopal Church was that they're way more Catholic than the Catholic churches these days. Much fancier and much more kind of stylised formal language.
Okay, so Scottish Episcopals are pretty high church?
Yeah. I mean, higher than most Catholic churches, I think. But yeah, that was quite odd for me to kind of come up against that. But I quite liked it. I quite enjoyed it. All of the kind of theatre involved. I don't know. I mean, as I say, I know that you're a churchgoer, and these days I'm not. But there was always the language to enjoy. I remember as a little, like quite a little kid, just being fascinated with these words that you would hear that you didn't hear anywhere else. And things like, I remember, I'm always very disappointed that these days, as we see through a glass darkly, it's not usually translated like that, because it's such a beautiful, poetic way of expressing that idea. So maybe I'd like churches to be a little higher, just because the language was prettier.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a very good reason.
One of my strongest memories of mentally playing with language in church as a kid is when my sort of best friend growing up and I were essentially asked to leave because he had leaned over to me at one point and said, "Hey, did you notice if you spell Jesus backwards, it sort of sounds like sausage?" And that's what we did for the rest of the time until we were escorted out. And so, yeah. And as you say, I've been going to church for my whole life. I have a master's degree in theology. And every now and then I still giggle about that.
I need to tell you, after what I was saying about Scott's spelling, that's so brilliant. You've just ruined Jesus for me in the best possible way. But sometimes in Scots, particularly kids at school, I would hear this. It's not an insult that I would particularly use, but sometimes people will call each other sausages. You sausage. And I once asked the class, we were writing in Scots, and I asked them to write down their favourite Scots word. And a kid chose sausage, and he spelled it Sasij. And so Jesus and sausage, that's absolutely beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to my buddy Tom for providing me with giggles throughout an entire master's degree.
I can't think of a time in my life where that wouldn't be funny. Doesn't matter how much
funny.
Education or erudition I come upon. even when I'm 90 years old, the fact that Jesus backwards is a bit like sausage. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Tom, good work, sir. Good work.
Right? Excellent. Just so good. All right. So moving on from
I
quick
may also
blasphemy.
have to leave.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been ejected from my own podcast for laughing.
You can go in the hall and come back when you're calmer.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So my word today is despot.
Ooh, nice.
And so this is
Or
one of those
not,
things,
maybe.
or not.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet despots. So this is one of those things like it is sort of slightly esoteric now. You don't hear it.
Oh, I did. I've
too much, I
I've
don't
totally
think.
gotten the giggles. I really
I
do
know.
think I might have to stand in the hall for a minute. So,
I knew it would happen.
so that I can, listen and take you seriously and generally be an adult and such like that.
Yeah, it's not easy.
God. Oh, man. These hilarious despots.
Yeah, so funny.
Okay. Think of dead puppies. Think of dead puppies. Think of
Yeah,
dead puppies.
think of dead
That's how it
puppies.
goes.
I might have we might use that again for our first repeated cold open.
Oh no!
So-
If there's going to be a cold open, it should absolutely be. And my friend leaned over to me and said, "Hey, did you know that Jesus backwards sounds a bit like sausage?"
Yeah, that's probably going to be it. And then people will kind of be either chuckling or just turn it off right away.
Scandalized.
So this, because I'm nerdy and extremely low culture, this makes me think of video games, because one of my lifelong obsession, video game-wise, is the Civilization series, where despotism is one of the,
Yes.
as you're going through,
Now,
despotism is one of the forms of government you kind of transition through as you're building your nerdy...
dude, you
Civilization.
do not have to tell me about Civilization because
Okay, good.
I am the youngest of 4. Okay, I have 2 older brothers
Okay.
and an older sister, and the younger of my 2 brothers, he is a massive nerd, and he was the owner of computer consoles, games, and such. He was the kid who was really into that stuff, which is ironic because
Right.
the oldest of my brothers, he now, in fact, and has done for many, many years, he works in the computer games industry. But
Oh, okay.
while he was, he was interested and played games and had all this, I think that Barry was the one who really kind of geeked out on it. And there's like, I don't know, 8 years between me and Barry. And so I was the
Okay.
little sister and he was the kind of nerdy teenager. And I wanted to hang out with my big brother. And he found me young and annoying. But I could occasionally be useful for such things as like, this is the past. So things like making sure the cable didn't come out, or sitting
Right.
on the cassette player so that it was in precisely the right angle so that noise didn't happen. And things like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So I used to be allowed, his great largesse was to allow me to sit very quietly and very still in the same room as him while he played computer games. And one of
Nice.
those games was Civilization.
Excellent. He's clearly a man of distinction and culture. So yeah, and where Despot kind of falls in the Civilization progression of, sort of government types, is itself a value judgment that is reflective of the way the word is usually used now. Like you rarely hear someone being called a despot in a way that elicits a, "Aw, thanks."
Yeah, I don't think it's not that kind of word, is it?
Yeah. So it basically, and if there is anyone who's unfamiliar with it, basically just a despot is like a powerful autocratic ruler, a king or an emperor. But it's, like as I say, it's got more of a value judgment than just a king or an emperor.
Yeah.
Like so yeah, it's generally just someone who rules by their own will and authority, and generally poorly, or to the detriment of To the detriment of someone, at least.
It's
if not all of his subjects.
A powerful
most of them,
ruler
some
who
of them.
doesn't give a shit about anybody but themselves.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
basically it. Now, it's interesting that originally, in the earliest uses of this, it was actually fairly neutral for the first couple of 100 years in English. It was like king or emperor, like you would call a ruler a despot, and it was just because it was in the same tone as you would say king or emperor.
The dude in charge.
And it was fine. Yeah, just the guy that was in charge, which it struck me as interesting because on a couple levels. Because on the one hand, those arrangements of power and government were much more common in the 16th century than they are today, especially. And they became gradually less sort of common and generally acceptable as time went by.
Okay.
So it makes sense that there would be more of a negative value attachment to that word. And also, the earlier you go, the smaller the number of people who are doing any writing gets.
Sure.
And the people who did the writing generally had official reasons for doing the writing, and therefore they were connected to the government usually in some way. So it makes sense that there'd be a more of a neutral tone to it back when it was official scribes doing most of the writing as opposed to the rabble.
Yeah, absolutely. There are things that you don't write in your work emails if you want to keep your job.
Yes, exactly. And so it's late arriving in English to start. It doesn't get into English until like the 1560s.
Oh, wow.
But it was used it was a Latin word, so it was used by people all over the place. So it kind of came into English when it needed to, I guess. It didn't become fully negative, and this is based on the Edom Online. And when it became fully negative is when it started being applied to Louis XVI and during the French Revolution. And so he was labeled the despot, and then despotic became a term for the enemy of the people, basically, at that point. So it turned into a negative thing. It comes from medieval Latin, despota, which in turn came from the Greek despotes, or despotes. And it's interesting, in Greek it did have a slightly negative connotation in Greek, where the sort of the definition that most places give is leader of a not free people.
Ah, okay.
And so that ties back to the whole, what power structure are you living in where you are describing a despotic arrangement. Now, this is not to fully buy into the whole, the Greeks were democratic thing. Because the Greeks didn't exist. It was city-states and all the rest.
Yeah.
And also, they gave
democratic
people the vote
is as democratic does.
Yeah. And so in that case, democratic does mean just men who have land and slaves, and definitely not women, and certainly not people from the outside.
Oh, no, goodness me, no.
But they were still high and mighty enough to look down on people who had a despot for a ruler. So at least they had that.
People are funny.
People are funny. So ultimately, despota or despotes comes from pi roots dems, which is a genitive case for a pi root meaning house or household, and poti or poti, P-O-T-I, meaning powerful or lord. So a despot is simply a mashup of the words meaning master of the house.
Master of the house, keeper of the zoo, happy to relieve you of a zoo or two.
I'm so happy you went there too. Because that's exactly what I did. The greatest comedic, hilariously vile and despicable innkeeping couple in the history of literature.
Yeah, I can't think of many other innkeeping couples, but you're right, the Thénardiers do stand out.
Oh, man. They're just so good. Side note, I recently dove face first back into the original Broadway cast recording of Les Mis and just listened to that on loop for 2 days, and it's just the greatest.
I had the original West End recording, and I used to listen to that a lot when I think when I was about maybe 14-ish. We went to see Les Mis as a family It was part of the great series of crazy bus tours. I have to tell you about that another time because it's like that could also be a podcast in itself. Basically, my uncle took a fancy to learning how to drive a coach. Just for fun, just because he'd always kind of fancied doing it. So he got a license to drive coaches, and then various members of my family set about planning coach trips to various places. I mean, when you have a family like mine, a coach is a useful means of transport because there's a heap of us. But one of the things, actually, I don't think Uncle George did drive us to Manchester. That may have been. It was a little bit of an ill-fated journey. I remember there being 2 women on board who were not family members who complained ceaselessly. But we saw it in Manchester, and I think we saw it in Edinburgh. It's one of the very few musicals that I've seen multiple times. I think I maybe saw it again a few years after that. I have to say, I wouldn't go again. You know, it was good. I enjoyed it. You cry your eyes out at the end because that's the deal. But there was a bit of you posted about this, didn't you, on Facebook? There's a bit of a discussion about the music versus the actual performance. It is worth pointing out that a neighbour of my aunt, my auntie had been on at least one of the trips to see Les Mis in the Great Coach Wars, but one of her neighbours said to her, "Oh, I meant to tell you, I saw a poster. That guy that you like is playing." And my auntie said, "What guy?" "You know that guy, Les Misérables?" So, yeah, Les Misérables I always think of as a sort of an ageing 70s entertainer. Yes.
That's the best.
Anyway.
Let's go see Les Miserables. He's down at the casino next weekend. Fantastic.
Yeah, that sort of chat. That's how I imagine him.
That's tremendous. Oh,
so Master of the House.
I'm so glad we had that because Master of the House is a despot. Yeah. So that dem root gives us words like domestic, domicile.
Sure. Okay.
Dominate. Also danger. So throw back to episode 56 where we talked about danger.
Nice.
Dungeon, and also timber.
Oh.
Which I was interested in, so I looked a little more into that. And that root, the word timber kind of goes a root that starts with house and goes to building, and then goes to the verb to build, and then stuff that you use to build.
I'm going down.
Buildings with.
I'm yelling timber. Sorry, that one had to get in there as well, just because it's such a hilarious song. Yeah, that's interesting.
And so that's where timber comes from. The second one, the poti, gives us all the various words that start with pot, or involve pot, like potency, potential, impotence, possible, power, and also, and this is one of my favorite, this is my new favorite scientific instrument, a potentiometer.
Ooh.
Right? And also the word posse.
Oh,
and because
that never occurred to me.
Yeah, well, posse, because that immediately, does that conjure like cowboy movies?
Yeah, absolutely. Wild West,
right,
of course.
But the word posse started out as just the shortening of a Latin phrase, posse comitatus, which translates as the power of the county.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's literally just a Latin word meaning power. The power of, and posse comitatus was the power of the county. So
everyone considered him the power of the county. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop singing now.
It's a fantastically musical episode. So yeah, Despot, just master of the house.
Nice.
Etc.
Who's your favourite despot of the modern era? So many to choose from.
I gotta give it to. Now I'm gonna screw this up because I think it's Tajikistan, the guy that changed the word for Saturday to be the name of his dog.
Sorry, what
so
now?
Yeah, I honestly don't remember if it's Tajikistan or Uzbekistan.
Wow.
But it's one of the northern stands has a famously just bananas
absolutely batshit
president.
Crazy. Wow.
And they unveiled there's a massive statue of the dog in the capital city, of the president's dog,
Monday,
on like a
Tuesday,
plinth,
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Tiddles, Sunday.
Yeah, and it's
Holy shit.
so. I got to give it to that guy whose name I did know at one point, as I did know the name of the country. I
mean,
think it's
you'd
either
look that
Tajikistan
shit
or
up, wouldn't you?
Uzbekistan. But look him up because it's bonkers, the stuff that he gets into.
I kind of want to look him up right now while I'm talking to you. Only extreme self-restraint and the knowledge that that's kind of rude is stopping me from doing that.
Look it up as soon as you get a chance because it is, it's worth it. There's some crazy. The stands. I've never been anywhere in that part of the world. I've always sort of wanted to go, just because it's an interesting looking place that's utterly foreign to me. But yeah, they have some characters in charge.
Some characters in charge. A friend of my mother's went, back when travel was still a thing that normal people could do. And not just, I don't know if you saw this, but a couple of weeks ago, the British government decided that quarantine after all travel was necessary, unless you were a businessman or a financier, because those guys are too important to have to do things like quarantine. And that's what Britain has become. If you are a rich guy who can make a lot of money for other rich guys, then do what the fuck you like. Anyway, besides that point, back when travel was not just a distant dream, a friend of my mother's went on holiday with her daughters to, I believe it was Baku, which is the capital of Uzbekistan. I might be mistaken about it being Uzbekistan, but they went to one of the stands.
I think it's Azerbaijan, isn't it?
Sorry, you're correct. They went to Azerbaijan. I always get that. I always conflate that with the stands as well, which is very, very bad of me. And the photographs that they took looked glorious. And of course, there was nobody there. It was the equivalent of like going to the Colosseum and there being like 15 people randomly wandering about the whole place. All these gorgeous pictures of, beautiful architecture and historic monuments and just like people getting on with their business and absolutely no tourists. But it looked really great. You should also check out The Misadventures of Ramesh Ranganathan. Do you know this show? You don't? It's not a series in the regular sense. I think there were sort of 3 episodes and then maybe a second set of 3 where he visits places that people don't usually visit. So one of the places that he goes to is Haiti. And
okay.
It's really, I mean, it's Ramesh Ranganathan, so it's great. And he's very, very funny, obviously, in all these places that he goes to. But I'm looking this up so I can give you better information. Yeah, he's been to places like Bogota, and he went to Haiti. Oh, come on, where else has he been? But he went to, I want to say Serbia. No, it wasn't Serbia. This is really, really boring, isn't it? Watching me go something, 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 Ramesh Ranganathan. I just want to see where he's been to. He went to somewhere that was either Stani or perhaps Azerbaijan. And it was super interesting. Yeah, you'd enjoy it.
I'm going to correct myself because I did have to look it up. It is actually the guy I'm thinking of was Turkmenistan.
Nice.
He unveiled a 19-foot golden statue of his favorite type of dog in the town square, complete with like LED screens showing the dogs frolicking around in the middle of
capital Ashgabat. I always remember that one for some reason.
I always mix up the capital cities there. I remember Ashgabat because it starts with an A, like Turkey's capital does.
Ah, I've never thought of that. I don't know how I remember
Turkey,
that one.
Ankara, Turkmenistan, Ashgabat.
Here are the places that Ramesh has been to. Colombia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, not Serbia. That was really, really interesting. He went to Ethiopia, Albania, Zimbabwe, Haiti and Mongolia. So they're all very much places that people don't necessarily go to as tourists, but
Yeah, not your tourist hotspots.
really cool. Some of them are places that I think, like, as a direct result of him visiting these places, they'll get tourists, but some of them are absolutely fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
Even from
Always
a
wanted to go to
TV, let's show you the nice bits kind of perspective. Some of them are
Right,
terrifying. Yeah, cool. Despot.
And that's it for another episode of Lexitecture. To get in touch with us about something you heard this episode, you can email us at words@lexitecture.com. You can also follow along and talk to us at Lexitecture on Facebook and Twitter, and at Lexitecture Podcast on Instagram. For back episodes and the occasional blog post, visit us at lexitecture.com. Thanks very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.